Hello my friends and viewers. Today I'm going to review the pretty old Finnish fighter from the Swedish tree, Mörkö-Morane, which is a pretty successful Finnish modification of the French Morane-Saulnier MS 406 fighter. Its main difference is that it uses it was given to the Finns by the Nazi Germany government after occupation of France and surrender of the French armed forces, and is basically pretty successful Finnish modification of the Morane-Saulnier MS 406 fighter, which Finns did by through installation of the Klimov VK for 105P 11 cylinder inline engine from the Soviet Soviet MG3 interceptor. The first machines from this area had the mixed armament from both machines. They had two rifle caliber French machine guns in the wings and one high caliber Soviet Berezin UB heavy machine gun with 230 rounds of ammunition. However, almost all machines which were actually finished by the Finns were later rearmed with a German MG151 20mm machine cannon from the like the one installed on the Messerschmitt BF 109, which was installed in place of the Berezin UB heavy machine gun and shot through the through the end. It was a motor cannon. I don't know how to call it in English. It shot. It was placed between the two rows of cylinders, and it shot through the propeller shaft. In the last update, or maybe earlier, but I had only noticed it now, the Mörkö-Morane had finally received its historical MG151 20mm machine cannon upgrade, and it had drastically increased the effectiveness of this plane, because the Berezin heavy machine gun had pretty poor damage. It lacked decent high explosive or armor piercing incendiary rounds, and as a result was pretty useless. Now you have a 20mm machine cannon from the one of the best fighter planes in the history of World War II, and even so you have only 120 rounds when you use a 20mm machine cannon. Since it can be loaded with Minengeschoss high explosive rounds, you can get way more kills on while using the machine cannon, then when Mörkö-Morane was still limited to only using Berezin machine gun. As you can see, sometimes a few hits with Minengeschoss rounds is enough for enemy plane to fall apart. The plane can reach its maximum speed of 525 kilometers per hour on the altitude of 5 kilometers, and its turn time is 18 seconds, which makes it a pretty good plane for rank 2, especially given it has a pretty low BR of 2.0. Maybe, well, I personally, after trying this plane with 20mm cannon, I guess it is my favorite rank 2 fighter plane, because it's pretty balanced. It has both good armament, pretty high speed, and decent maneuverability, which makes it pretty versatile against enemy planes. Its armament is more than enough to kill any enemy which you can encounter at its BR, and you are, for example, 100 kilometers faster than the Finnish Fokker D-21 fighter plane, mainly because you have a more powerful engine and retractable gear, landing gear. The engine is water cooled, and unfortunately your fuel tank is placed in the front part of plane's construction, between the cockpit and the engine, which means that if enemy bullets somehow manage to shot through your engine, you are pretty much done. Since your fuel tank will either explode or be set alight, which means death for you. However, it happens pretty rarely. Instead, most of the time, the biggest threat to you in head-ons is the destruction of your water cooling system, or damage to the oil tank, which will mean that you must return to base before the oil leaks out of the engine and the engine stops. Unfortunately, due to the engine being relatively heavy in relation to the in comparison, due to the engine being pretty heavy in comparison to the plane's airframe, such situations during landing are pretty frequent on this plane. It is unfortunately, it's pretty hard to land properly. You need to use brakes. You need to either don't use brakes, or if the airfield is too short, you need to use them very carefully if you don't want to turn over. However, well, since you will get repaired anyway, it's not really dangerous, but just but if your plane's airframe had received some damage from the enemy fire, it can such minor crashes during landing can lead your plane to fall apart, which will mean that due to the game's rules you will not get repaired if your plane's airframe will receive critical damage. So just you were warned. The tactics to be used on this plane are pretty similar to the ones most suitable to the German fighters. It's the actual wing grip speed of this plane is 756 kilometers per hour, which is very high for its BR, and makes this Finnish fighter very suitable for boom zoom tactics. Well, I mean, you know what the boom zoom is. It is climbing and then diving on enemy planes while firing on high speeds. However, since your turn time is pretty decent, you can also turn fight many of your enemies, except for maybe Japanese fighters, which are more maneuverable than you. However, those can be taken out in head-ons easily because of their weak armament. Yes, Japanese 3 has many prop fighters with heavy armament. However, on the rank 2, the only decent armed Japanese fighters are the early Zeros and maybe Key 45 and Key 100 second model, the one with I mean the one that is premium and fitted with turbocharger. That being said, in reality, Mörkö-Morane fighter wasn't as nearly as successful as it is in game. only 3 planes were completed and managed to take part in the continuation war before it ended, and by that time most of the Finnish fighter force was the main Finnish fighter at the time was German Messerschmitt Bf 109, and Mörkö-Morane wasn't nearly as good as Messerschmitt was. Well, it was pretty good as given the time it was born and the given the situation the Finland was in at the time, Finns had to use every resource they could to defeat Soviets, and well, since many Soviet aircraft had to crash land on the Finnish territory, their pilots were taken as war prisoners, and the planes were disassembled, either disassembled or used in the Finnish Air Force. Well, it's pretty funny, but the majority of Finnish tanks during the Finno-Soviet war and the continuation war, this is the name the Finns used to describe the Finnish part of the World War II. Most of the Finnish tank force was actually comprised of the captured Soviet tanks like Klim Voroshilovs and T-26. So yeah, before T-26 the Finns had only a handful of Vickers 6-ton tanks. However, one must know that the T-26 was basically a modified Vickers tank, so they were actually quite related. So this is the last enemy plane which I had managed to kill in this battle, and as you can see, I had literally managed to save my team from the defeat, since the enemy team had managed to take out way more ground targets. However, they had lost all planes, and we had won. Thank you for watching, and Slava Ukraini! Support Ukraine in the struggle against Russian invaders in the every way you can. Thank you for watching, like and subscribe.